Good morning, good evening, and good day, wherever you are, and welcome to the BushHawk Aviation RC Podcast, where we show you a way to get into this amazing hobby and stay in it in an affordable and cost-effective way. Today on the show, we have Matt Allen from the United States, who also is a co-founder of the RC Noobs Aviation Podcast. And today we are going to be delving into the subject of how to get into the hobby in an affordable way and how to find out if you are actually keen on this hobby and keep you in this hobby in the long term. So to start off with, we will be talking about for your first plane, what plane should you be selecting as your first beginner plane? So Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So that's a good question. That's a big question too. There are a couple different ways to get on the hobby. I know it seems the popular way is to find the fastest, most expensive plane that you can afford and buy that. And that seems to be what people want. Cause like the big flashy jet, right? Let's get the flashy jet. And you get it. And then you might as well take that money and put it in the toilet and hit the flush button. Cause that's probably the biggest beginner mistake. And that's why I was like, okay, resist the impulse. And if you go to like a brick and mortar store, they're going to hear that and they're going to say, look, I will sell you that because, you're the one with the money, but I'm going to recommend something else. Yeah. And it's going to be the same kind of thing I'm going to recommend for your listeners here. And a lot of that is start with a sim, start with a simulator. And if you can, you basically look at the most expensive transmitter that you can afford. They'll get you what you need, and I'll talk about what that is in a minute. But basically, you get one of those, and you download a simulator, and some of them are like free, and some of them are cheap.
So some of them, like Phoenix RC, the simulator, which we'll have a link to in the description, along with a couple of others that aren't free. But still, work well. Real flight,
whatever the number is now, I think it's 9 or 9.5 or something like that. But Real Flight is a very popular one. They have very good physics. If you do slope soaring, or if you think you're going to do a lot of that kind of stuff, Pika Sim, if I recall right, that's either really inexpensive or cheap. Yeah. And there's a handful of very cheap quadcopter simulators. So it depends on what you want to go into.
Yeah, for sure.
But my thought is the Real Flight and the Phoenix RC are like, they will get you into the hobby and see if you actually like it.
Yeah, without throwing too much money at it.
Right,
yeah.
Without throwing too much money. And then basically, once you have the transmitter, that's probably the biggest cost, I guess, as far as hurdle wise to get into the hobby, as you can find. Once you have that, really, the extra parts are as simple. You can build it out of easy to find home materials like poster board or Depron if you're in different parts. Like I know, Matthew, you're in South Africa. I'm in the United States, in the Carolinas somewhere. I know some of the people who listen are going to be in Europe, where Depron is all over the place. Yeah. In certain parts of the country, they have different building materials. So you find the one that's light and cheap in your area. Yeah. And you can build almost any plane you dream up, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a creativity at your fingers. You just go ahead and design one and hope it flies.
Yeah, exactly right.
Obviously, beginning with a proven design as your first plane is probably going to be the most recommended way, rather than going and designing your own. What did you say?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I agree. And that's actually where you kind of get into a couple different ways of getting in, right? You can get in with one of those very inexpensive kind of 820 brushed motor, like the Flight Test has a thing called an Easy Pack, and that will get you in the air and get you trying it. It has like, I think they're selling it for about $50, where it basically has a transmitter, it has a power system and a control board and some batteries and stuff, and then you can build a really lightweight model, and it comes with a couple, and then you can basically use that same material that we're talking about to try and experiment with other things if you want. But it gets you in the air and gets you to see if you like it. And they have very durable models that come with it, so you can kind of, you can try it and make mistakes because you're gonna.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's one of the ways I suggest that the I don't know about the problem with that is the transmitter won't go in and work with any of the sims. And it's also not a transmitter that you can then move the items from plane to plane terribly well. And you're not going to get much bigger than something that's the
Like a
size of your
20
laptop.
inch. Yeah, like a 20-inch wingspan. So 30 centimeters.
Right. And so you're not going to get, it's not going to be terribly big, and it's not going to have a big presence. You won't be able to go far away, which may be good.
It's a good, but at the same time, with it being very light, it also, if there's wind or something like that, it becomes a rather large issue with a light model. Yeah, you have to pick and choose your days, because something bigger than heavier breeze, that plane really won't fly terribly well. You're not going to have as much fun. So the antidote to that, or the solution to that, is to build a bigger, slightly heavier model. And when you do that, that power system that comes with that setup is just not going to be adequate. And so if you have the transmitter with the simulator, typically those work with whatever. It'll come with a receiver, and you can then pair it with any power system that fits the size of the plane you want. And when you look at like the kind of planes people recommend for beginner planes, they're going to be those, the Cessna type trainer planes, where they're high wing, the fuselage is hanging underneath the wing. There's a little bit of dihedral, which is basically like a bend in the wing. And it's going to have very forgiving tendencies. It's going to be easy to control. You can keep it in the air for 15, 20 minutes where you can learn. The difficulty about getting a jet is jets typically fly for about 3 minutes. Then their battery they run through their battery quick. So you might be able to fly it, but even if you get on the ground, you're only going to be up there for 3 minutes. And you don't learn a whole lot in 3 minutes. Yeah, and at 3 minutes with a jet moving at a rather fast speed, it becomes very hard to learn orientation and that type of thing, because you just, if you're trying to learn and it's flying across the sky, and you can't try new things with it because it's moving too quickly, then you're not actually learning. You're like sticking in the same habit.
And what you end up mistakes become big quick.
Yes, they do, because now rather than your mistake moving at 20 miles an hour, it's moving at 100 miles an hour, and that mistake is then 5 times bigger.
It's anyway. So what the recommendation is to find a trainer plane, and there's another method too, and I don't want to poo-poo on it either, is to go to one of the major manufacturers and grab a ready to fly trainer plane, and that is like a soup to nuts, all the way, has everything in it, includes batteries, transmitters, receivers, the plane, the power system, all the stuff is there, and they're designed for beginner flyers. I know I'm going to say 2 Horizon Hobby models. It's not like I'm not trying to promote Horizon Hobby. They just happen to be in almost every hobby store in America, and I think they're in almost every hobby store everywhere around the planet.
They're in almost every hobby store everywhere. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So the Aero Scout is a great one. It comes with like a stabilized mode, a trainer, or like a beginner mode, a trainer mode, and then like I think you got it. Go for it. Kind of mode where all the safety systems are off. So the first one's kind of like a stabilized. You really can't go too far. You can't turn the plane too far in any one direction, so your mistakes can't ever get too big. And when you let go of the controls, because that's a tendency of somebody who gets scared when they watch their plane go somewhere that it's not supposed to, they go, and they let go of the controls. Well, in that case, their system is set up so that it returns to level flight.
Yeah, and that corrects it so it doesn't.
Right. So your actual controls are to push it outside of level flight, and then when you let go, it goes back to that.
Yeah.
But that's not how normal airplanes fly. So a lot of people complain that that's not giving you good, good tendencies.
Yeah, because then you
learn that
you learn, but then you begin to expect that the plane will auto level itself if you let go.
Right. Also, that you should push really hard in one direction to get it to turn,
Yeah.
Whereas in in normal flight, basically you have to push it, and basically you're making changes to the control surfaces so it rotates to a certain point, and then you bring it back to center. If you leave it there, it'll and basically if you leave it there, it'll basically keep at that attitude
Yeah.
or that angle unless you change it to something else. So you actually have to change it and roll it back the other way. And that is not something that you have to do in that beginner mode. So it's a lot of the old people, the people who are in the hobby for a long time is what I mean by old. They complain about that whole system. But my thought is if it gets you in the air, enjoying it, getting to learn orientation, that when you're coming at you, the controls are reversed. That's like the biggest hurdle. People go, oh my gosh, what's going on? And they'll physically like turn themselves around so they're in orientation with the plane and then do the controls, because that's how their brain is working at the minute. But there's a certain point at which it just sort of clicks and your brain says, oh yeah, right. And then it flips and it's okay. And after a while, that flip happens so quick, you don't even notice it. I'm sure, Matt, you and I don't notice it.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly remember on my first flight. And my first flight, I didn't use a simulator. I bought the electronics before COVID. They arrived halfway through the first lockdown of COVID. And then I made in my plane, and let's just say that was very interesting, because the moment I came towards myself, I sent it into a spiral because I applied the wrong way, and I panicked and let go, and then that was the end of that plane. And then I decided maybe the wise thing to do would be to get a simulator, and then I got a simulator, and then it's been far easier since then.
The simulator will help you get that orientation quickly. And that's a big thing. And it allows you to make the mistake without costing you any additional money than the transmitter you bought. And I think that's one of the big pluses of that. It gets you over that initial, that's the first big hurdle that will cost you a lot of money. Once you've got that kind of down, where your brain is not trying to switch between it's coming at me versus going away and trying to reorient, then you kind of go, okay, now I've got controls. Now I can actually, if you have a plane, you probably go out and fly it and have pretty good success. You'll still make mistakes. Hopefully they won't be big. And then the other benefit to a simulator after that is if you want to try something new, you can try it on the simulator and get your hand-eye coordination or get your brain wrapped around how that works ahead of time, so you know what to expect when you get out there. It's going to be different in the field, but the simulators do a really good job of getting you close.
Yeah, so I think that the simulators are not necessarily very good at teaching you how a certain plane will fly. It's more of teaching you your hand-eye coordination. So when you're actually flying a plane, then you find, okay, this is how it's going to fly, but your mind's not trying to, you're not having to think about how must I reverse the controls, or what must I do if this happens.
Right. Yeah. It creates muscle memory where you're not actually even thinking about it. It's just doing it. You just, I'm in this situation, I got to do this. Yeah. And then you do it and you don't think about it. Whereas the problem is when you're in a situation and it's going to the ground pretty quick, you have a choice. You either have, left or right or up or down, and you've got one chance to make that the right choice. And that's where the simulator helps you, get your muscle memory to the point where it will always do the right thing. In that situation, you'll have that in your back pocket, and it'll help keep your plane in the air and giving you more time to learn, and then giving you more time to do things you enjoy. So simulators, to me, simulators the first one. As much as I didn't do it, I should have.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the next is like, well, how do you get a plane inexpensively? The easy setup, that FT easy setup is really, and I think that the China version is like the C-130 freighter or something like that. I say that it's just like a generic kind of model. They have a bunch of variations now.
They do.
But that setup is a good set. That's the same guts. And you can, when you're done flying that, or that becomes a boring model, or you bust it, you can build a new one and take out and this is kind of going with any RC plane. If you buy a ready to fly system that has everything, you can pull out all the guts and make a new model and put that in. Yeah. And then you have a whole new plane.
Yeah, that applies true for like for most models that you buy, if you crash it really badly and damage the entire airframe, then you go ahead and cut out everything, and I put all of that into a new plane.
Yeah, and you can sometimes maybe one or two parts will bust, but what I found is basically you might lose a propeller and you might lose a servo, but most of the time the motor's okay, as long as it's, especially if it's a ready to fly system, they've paired the electronics together so that they won't damage each other.
Yeah.
So you're not likely to overheat a motor or overheat a speed controller, and the battery will be fine as long as you didn't damage it in the crash. Like that's the core of your system. And then the servos are basically what control the surfaces that move your plane around. And sometimes those will when it lands, it overpowers the servo and it strips out a gear or something. So maybe you might have to replace one of those, but they're cheap. You know, servos and propellers are very inexpensive because they're the kinds of things that tend to break more often. Which is good. That means go ahead.
It's sort of like a built-in fail point that it won't damage anything else. So the cheap small parts are more likely to fail than like the core of the system. So in a crash, your small parts that you can easily replace get broken or something like that, but your main core, like your motor controller and the battery, will normally remain unharmed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's perfect. So then after you kind of choose which path you want to go, and you can get pretty, I think the Horizon Hobby has the Cub, which is going to have a similar problem because it's very lightweight and very small. Has a very similar problem to, you have to choose which days you go out.
Yeah.
As the easy setup, but it's a full-fledged complete system with those 3 levels of safety and that help you learn. And then the Aero Scout is basically a more traditional sized, I think it's like a 45 centimeter, maybe, no, wait a second. Yeah, 45 centimeter.
So
40 inch?
40
inch?
A 40 inch is going to be about a meter. It's about 1 meter.
Okay, right. 1.5. Yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry. My brain doesn't think in meters yet, although the conversion is pretty simple.
Multiplied by 2.5.
2.5, that's it. Okay, so anyway, so it's like 40, in my world, it's 40 inches, 45 inches, something like that. So it's on a regular size park flyer RC level. And that's a great size to get started in.
Yeah.
It's small enough to be able to transport. It's big enough to be able to see in the sky. It tends to be able to handle rougher wind situations so that you can fly in more conditions. The components are ones that will fit almost any design you can dream up after that, as long as it's about that same size.
Yeah. And from my experience, the majority of your planes, well, specifically foam planes in the medium category, are about 1 meter wingspan. That seems to be like the standard. So a 40 inch 1 meter, that's a pretty universal standard. Well, I'm not going to say universe, but planetary standard.
Between 1 and 1.5 meters tends to be 1.2 meters tends to be about it.
Yeah.
And again, it's a great size. It's a great size to get started.
Yeah, it is.
So
after you've chosen your first plane, which should be a trainer plane, that it might not look the coolest. That's one thing that I've noticed. It will not look the coolest, but it will get you flying those planes that look the coolest as sooner than if you go straight to flying the planes that look the coolest. That's one step that gets you 3 steps further.
Right. I agree. I was going to say, once you have that, probably the next biggest second thing you have, once you have all the basic components, find somebody who also flies remote control airplanes, who's done it for a little while and is, at that point, pretty comfortable, pretty proficient, and have them look over your plane before you send it in the air. Yeah. Because if it's not ready to fly, especially if you've made something yourself, because they'll be able to tell how much the control surfaces deflect are going to be too much to handle, What is counterintuitive is what I thought was what you needed was big throws. So big travel distances on those control surfaces when it's, a new model. You want to be able to have all the control you can.
Yeah.
And what I learned was that makes it really, really touchy, really hard to fly.
Yeah. Even sometimes it's just far too much, and if you're a beginner and you control, and you're trying to control it, but you apply too much, then you put it into like a spin or something, which you want to stay away from. So yeah, preferably if there's as they call a throw gauge in the plans, or in the kit, set it up to those throws, and there's normally a low and a high throw. If you are beginner, set it up to the low throw. That the high throw is maybe after you've got 10, 20, 30 flights on it, something like that, where you've got where you now are comfortable flying it as it is, and you feel like well, as long as you feel comfortable pushing your throws up and being able to do more stuff. I think that's the main criteria, because normally it's quite obvious if you're not comfortable or if you are comfortable with the plane as it is. So try get comfortable before turning them up a bit.
And that's something that some of the simulator models will be similar to what you have. Find one that's similar to what you're either going to build or what you're going to buy, and try flying that. And if it has a high and a low mode, check it out ahead of time so you can get a feel as to like, oh, wow, high is really, really hard to control. It's like, let me move it to low. And you're like, oh, this is easier. I can actually, I might be able to keep this in the air for longer.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, that's really the takeaway is if you can try it without having to spend money at every crash, you're ahead of the game. And that's kind of what simulators help with. And I think, having one of those, you can do the store-bought models. You can also buy a flight test system. They're relatively inexpensive, although they do cost some money. And depending on where you are in the planet, that shipping cost goes up a lot. So it's not necessarily cheap.
Yeah. So
but you can download the plans and build them locally. And so you can use that proven design and be able to cut it out and build it in your own home for a lot cheaper.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so like if you're in the United States, then for your foam board kit models, I know there's Flight Test and there's the Hang RC. Then I don't know about Europe. I have very low information on that, but I think Flight Test does ship some of theirs over to Europe, or they used to. I don't know.
They used to have a distributor in Germany, I think.
Yeah, and then over here in South Africa, well, there's my company, which is BushHawk RC. Then Australia, I'll take a look.
And I know you've got a couple designs, and I know you've got about like 600 in the wings, don't you?
600 in the wings.
Yeah, then you have about 40 or 50 future designs that you're currently working through.
They completed in my terms, but they're actually not completed. I need to spend a lot more time on them. But yeah.
But yeah, he's got a couple designs there that look really good. I've only been able to build the one and haven't gotten in the air yet. But they come together really well. And honestly, I'm confident that what you've put together will be a great starter.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, so I've got the two kits. One's a smaller, and these are like the two I'd recommend if you're in South Africa.
How your we're talking about how your kits for South Africans are going to be the most cost-effective kind of way to get an easy to build kit that they can take and get started in the hobby.
Yeah, for sure. So our motto is to get people into the hobby cost effectively, which is something that I've seen not a lot of in South Africa. A lot of the hobby stores in South Africa for an E-flite model, it's considerably more expensive than in the United States, even though the price is the same, just because of the rate, the exchange rate, and that sort of thing. But yeah,
right. There's exchange rates and shipping and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So in South Africa, I've got a couple of my kits which will be linked in the description below. So if you're in South Africa or one of the nearby neighboring countries, then you can check those out. if you're in the United States, you can check out the Hawk RC or Flight Test. And then, I'll put some links if I can find any others for Europe and Asia, and then Australia, and those areas.
Right. So why are we recommending like a foam board or a poster board or something like that instead of balsa? I guess is probably the big question people have.
Yeah.
What I've noticed is the trend in the world is most people don't really want to build a whole lot, and if they do, they want it quick and easy. Balsa tends to be a builder's kind of kit. Like if you love putting something together, if you were a Lego kit builder and just loved all that kind of stuff, then building a balsa kit might be up your alley.
Yeah, for sure.
Flight Test style or the foam board kits are similar, but they go together. They'll go together in a night. Like you can literally, for me, I can cut one out and have one built, I think, in an hour and a half. But that's also, I'm an experienced builder. I cut the patterns out very quickly, and I can build without having to take forever. But even if it's your first time, I think I built the Arrow, which is a flying wing, not necessarily the first plane to build. But it's quick. It's like 2 sheets of foam and it folds together quickly. I think I had it together in about 2.5 hours. Yeah. And that was just me not knowing anything. I think I'd only built one plane previously, and it just, it was pretty quick and easy. Like I said, balsa models they can go together very quickly, but that's usually with experience. Usually the first 1 or 2 is going to take weeks to almost up to a month.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken with guys who their first balsa model, which they scratch built from planks to balsa, and that took them upwards of 3 months to complete, which I completely understand. There's people out there that appeals to them, but for me personally, I don't want to spend 3 months on a plane. Minimum 2 evenings for me, but it really depends on what you like doing. If you like assembling kits that like you said, Lego kits, then balsa might be the way to go for you.
Exactly. So part of the reason why we recommend foam is that it's a lot quicker assembly, is what I feel. But the other half of that is that, okay, now you've built a model. It's your first one. You don't know how it's going to fly. If you tank it into the ground, you literally throw it and it takes an arc into the ground and it busts up a bit, and you have to rebuild the airframe. Okay, now you've got another couple hours and a couple more dollars. And I don't know how the prices are of foam in South Africa. In our neck of the woods, each sheet of foam costs $1.25. You can build an airframe for $2. Or $2.50 or something like that. So it's really inexpensive to just, I'll just go build another one. And as a beginner's platform, that's really smart. That's a smart way to put your money into the hobby. And if you don't mind, if you take it with a grain of salt, it's probably needed to have with it, where you throw it knowing like, okay, this may not work and I may have to rebuild this. Like when it happens, you laugh at it and you go, that was hilarious. And hopefully you get it in the air and have a little bit of fun before it happens. But crashing is part of the hobby. That's something I think beginners don't realize. Yeah. Is you're going to try something new and it's not always going to be a success. And when it's not a success, some of the outcomes are that you're going to have to rebuild an airframe.
Yeah, or at least there are repairs on it. And from my experience, the one thing that I found to be very useful with building your own foam models is that if you build the plane from say a pre-cut kit, or even if you scratch build it, then if you're building the plane, you know how to repair it. Because you've built it, if a part breaks, you actually know how that part went together and how to rebuild one without having to buy a replacement part and actually spend so you don't have to spend much more money on it to repair it. And
you might even be able to repair it with the scraps you had from the first build.
Yeah. I mean, often, like if you have a kit and say you fly into a tree and it takes a few chunks of your wing out.
Like my partner Joe, he had like the bottom 3/4 or bottom quarter of his plane ripped off the front of it, and he just left it there. He's like, that's good. Yeah. And we kept flying it.
Yeah, and normally it's surprisingly enough, sometimes these foam board models Well, I actually don't have much experience with a normal model, but like a foam
Yeah.
board model, if you crash it and say you rip your landing gear off, but you still want to fly, then you just pick it up, throw it in the air, I do a hand launch and land it in the long grass, and it
Yep.
doesn't mind.
Exactly.
It
Yeah. And
flies,
if go ahead.
and it still flies as nearly as well, maybe not quite as well, but nearly as well. And I think that's one of the beauties of it. And if you want to do a repair, then you have for me, it's a hot glue stick and a lighter, and I melt the hot glue with the lighter, stick the parts back together, and I can throw it back in there within 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It doesn't have to be as complicated as some people might make it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the only other thing I can recommend, and this is I'll call it a shameless plug. And I know, Matt, your podcast here is probably going to start tackling a lot of these subjects so that your beginners will have the knowledge they need to get in the air and running.
Yes. Yeah.
If we started that same way, our kind of setup is that first year of our podcast is about all the individual components, because when I got in, all I wanted to know was more. I wanted to know more. What are these things? How do they work?
Yeah.
What are the terminology like? Because you can't find out more online if you don't know what to look up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you look up
Right.
what parts are used in an RC plane, generally the results aren't exactly very informative. And
Right. If you just say, oh, it's a motor, it's like, no, it's actually a brushless motor. And there's a bunch of numbers and they vary wildly. And what do they mean? What's this KV thing? And then you look at the battery, there's at least 6 or 7 different terms that all mean something, but it's cryptic.
Yeah,
it's like
they use what's the word for that? They use
proprietary stuff. It's industry terms,
Yeah. So
and most of
they don't tell you exactly what it means. They give you
it's 35C.
3 letters or something. You're like, okay,
what does that mean?
What is that?
It's a 2S3P 40C. What does all that mean? That's just numbers and letters. Like, they all have meaning. And so if you want to know what those are, like our whole first year, if you want to listen to the Aviation RC Noob, just kind of get some detailed information. We did the best we could. With any luck, that'll give you the terminology. And honestly, Matt, I know you're going to get into it. Listen to Matt. He's going to tell you the same kind of information, but he'll probably also start pointing you to things that will get you started in your area if you're from South Africa. Because our reference is America. We have a different way to go about things. Like I know foam board is a lot harder to find in South Africa. Is that true?
It definitely
is. Inexpensive build materials. What you want is something that's somewhat stiff, lightweight, and as light as you can possibly get it. The lighter your plane is, the better it's going to fly overall.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know what materials are available. I thought it was available everywhere to everyone, right? And then we called about the terms Depron, right? Well, Depron has been used in Europe for a long time because most of Europe's constructions have been around for literally hundreds upon hundreds of years. And they have different like mold problems. And one of the ways to combat it is to put this mold resistant foam in between what's old and what's new. And so it's a rehab material for all their buildings. So it's everywhere, and because everybody needs it in Europe. Right. And it's really cheap. However, in America, our buildings are only like 100, maybe 150 years old, if it's really, really old. And I imagine South Africa is not a whole lot different.
No, it's not.
Most of the buildings are honestly about 40 years old here in America, truly. So what I'm saying is that material isn't here. And we have like one supplier in all of America. And he fought really hard to get that to be an item in America. Because most of the suppliers are like, no, you don't have the volume. It just isn't even worth us putting together a crate to send your way.
Yeah.
And sure. So I mean, what do people do in South Africa? I'm really curious, because when we do have a handful of people who do listen from different parts of the world. And I'm always curious to I want to point them to the material that's good for them.
Yeah. So I think in my experience, what I've seen a lot of people building models out of is what we call Corax, which is, I believe in the United States, it's called Coroplast,
Yeah.
which is the plastic with the little tubes in it. A lot of
Yeah.
people build flight test models from the 3mm stuff, and
Okay.
it works. It's okay, but it makes the plane quite a bit heavier. At least from what I've seen, about twice as heavy, which naturally then increases your stall speed at which is the speed at which your plane will stop flying and start falling. So it's okay.
Yeah, so lift is generated at a as a component of speed. Faster you go, the more lift. If your plane is heavier, you have to go faster for it to have enough lift for it to actually overcome the weight.
Yeah, for sure.
Which means that once you get too slow, if you're lightweight, that speed can be much slower than if you're heavy.
Yeah. So I've seen one advantage with it, and that is that it's indestructible. I mean, guys. So essentially, if you crash, from what I've seen, the only part that might break it is your propeller. Nothing else will break. I mean, guys, there's been guys that have built smallish planes out of the stuff and put a turbine on, which is this big fancy expensive thing that I don't even want to think about.
If I recall right, I mean it's a genuine jet engine.
Yeah, it's a miniature jet engine.
Right, so it gets really hot and it pushes out a lot of thrust. I've seen planes go really, really fast with the jet engine. We got a couple in our field that fly.
Yeah,
I'm like, wow, man, that's crazy.
You're like, yeah, I didn't even see that.
I know, right?
Yeah. So I think in my mind, it's the advantage is that it's very strong. So for me personally, I would only use it if I'm making a combat plane, which is like something that we'll talk about in a future episode. But it's essentially where you've got planes and depending on what type of combat it is, you're either trying to cut a streamer that's which is like a piece of ribbon hanging behind the plane, or you're actually trying to crash into the other plane, depending on
which is much harder.
Yes, I would only use it for that. So for like a general flying, it decreases. It makes it a lot harder to fly because you can't do like a nice slow flyby. You've got to, and landings are very interesting as well because you got to fly it at a decent speed to the ground, which is much harder.
Or design a lot of flaps.
Yeah,
and basically ways that traditional planes use to increase the lift vector on your plane.
Yeah, that as well.
So they can slow down enough to be able to land safely. That's how jet engines are able to even land. If you notice, like the wings basically expand both forward and backward to create this crazy undercambered shape.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that those big lumbering beasts can slow down slow enough to be able to land on an airfield.
Yeah. So that's about the only material that I've seen in South Africa here. However, I've managed to source a supplier, which is the reason why I'm able to sell foam board kits. Is I've managed to get a supplier, and it's a bit of a lengthy process because I've got to be a company to be able to purchase it from them, which has made things interesting. But yeah, so
you kind of have to be a company to sell to people, sell kits and all that stuff. So it's kind of like one of those things you already needed to do anyway.
Yeah,
but I get it where you're like, whoa, I want to just see if this works.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I've got to do 5 pages full of documentation just to get a test sheet.
Right.
But yeah, that's what I've seen. So yeah, obviously in the United States, you guys are extremely lucky in my mind, but
well, some of it is that I mean, we didn't come up with it to a degree. I mean, it's not entirely true. One of the other materials that people use is the fanfold foam, which is basically like the thin insulation foam that comes folded up, and it's like a pink or blue depending on what manufacturer it's, if it's Owens Corning or if it's 3M or if it's it's basically an expanded polystyrene foam that's used in building construction. And it's very thin, and you can buy a big length of it all kind of folded up. And that's another way to make planes very light, very efficiently. It's a similar construction method. So I don't know if you have that material available to you. It may not be as inexpensive or as cost effective as some of the other materials. And that's really what you're trying to do, is you don't want to spend a lot of money when you start the hobby, because you're learning, you're going to have to rebuild multiple times. Likely.
And I think the happy medium is where it's light, but at the same time it's strong enough and rigid enough to take like a couple of hard landings without collapsing. I think that's like, so it's not too heavy, it's not, but it's not too strong or even too weak for your plane.
Right.
So
it's tough. That's a tightrope walk. Walk. There we go. So it's about
in my mind, a lot depends on the design of the plane. I think strength is it's not a material, but it's a design as well.
Yeah, it's a combination of the both.
Yeah,
as it is in real planes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm trying to think of what other things people might want to know, to like how to get started. That's the other thing, is really looking for transmitters. I said we talk about that later.
Yeah.
But why don't we talk about that now?
Yeah, for sure.
I think the tendency is to go and get as big and as whatever as you need, right? And like, as awesome as you can get. And there's some things out there that'll cost an awful big penny to get, and they have like 20 channels of controls that are being sent out. It looks like it'll give you coffee. You know what I mean? Kind of, it's like too much. But I think as a beginner, all you really need are 6 channels of control, 5 to 6 channels of control. Really.
Yeah. I think
you don't need any more than that.
Yeah. So 6 channels and things like exponential and dual rates, which will generally be listed on the radio box. So
and you want to be able to reverse your servos, because sometimes what'll happen is you'll put your servo in backwards from what was intended by the manufacturer. And if you do that, it's like, well, it should be as simple as flipping a switch, which basically inverts the signal. And so it sends the correct signals now, so that the arms on the servos do the right thing. Those are important. I mean, I've looked at like, okay, if we get like a 4-channel little guy, because I wanted to try and do a really fast plane for very cheap. And one of the biggest hurdles in that, or one of the biggest costs in doing that, is to find a transmitter that's adequate enough, but is cheap. And that's that's the hard part, because that's a big cost component of getting started.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in my mind, if you're getting started, obviously it depends on the months, on your budget. But in my mind, I wouldn't spend more than 1,800 Rand on your transmitter, which is equivalent of $100. That's sort of like what where I'd draw the line. So
what have you found? What have you found as a transmitter that would fit into that cost model?
So,
because there's a couple, but there's not. I mean, that's a big component of your $100 estimate, or $100 budget. Yeah.
So I think what I've seen is the FlySky FSI6, which there'll be a link to in the description below.
I agree.
But that seems to be like one of the most popular radios that I've seen as a beginner radio. Even not as a beginner. I mean, I know guys that fly huge balsa planes on these things, not a single issue. So I know in some places they frowned upon a bit, but in my mind, as long as it gets you in the air and you're having fun, a reliable fun, then that's the main thing, as long as you're having fun. So I've seen the FlySky FSI6. You could go one step up, which is a little bit more expensive, not much, is the FSI6X, which is a little bit more advanced transmitter. Which as well, there'll be a link in this description below. Then I've seen Spectrum has their Spectrum 5 DX5. I think it's the DX5E. That seems to fit. The last time I checked, that fitted in with the with $100 limits, or DX4 or something like that. But that's what I would recommend. I've got a
When you
Yeah.
look at transmitters, though, if you're a new guy and maybe you want to expand upon what Matt's saying and try to look out and see what else is there, keep in mind, if you're like me and you want to build more than one plane, or you don't want to switch the receiver from plane to plane to plane, look how much the receivers cost by themselves too,
Yeah,
because that's going to be a cost component of each plane you build,
yeah,
if
I
that's
think
how you want to do it.
I think that's a very important factor, because
They range in price from, low end models, $10 to $16 to anywhere from $50 to $60.
yeah, I mean,
That's a big difference.
it's a big difference. I mean, I personally have radios which use those receivers from the low range, which cost, like, as you say, like $10, which is about 200 Rand.
Mhm.
And then I've got my other transmitter uses receivers at about $80, which is about 1,400 Rand. So it's a big range. So I think a big chunk of it depends on how much are you willing to spend on your receivers. If in the future, so think about the future, if you're going to build more planes, if you turn out if you find out you're actually really keen in this hobby and you want to get more planes, how much are your receivers going to cost you? Because you don't want to get 5 more planes and then have to go and spend $400 on receivers. If that thought doesn't, if you're not happy with that thought, then maybe you should look at a transmitter with much cheaper receivers, or at least cheaper receivers.
Right.
Yeah.
I know my first one was a Radio Link, and Radio Link is the people who make the Pix Cube, and I'm trying to think. They make a couple remote autonomous units.
Yeah.
So they're like, that's their bread and butter, but they have a controller that goes with that, and it goes out to 2.5 kilometers, which is really far. And I looked at the receivers. The receivers are super cheap, and I think the model I went with, you could send up to, I think, 10 channels or even 16 channels out.
Yeah.
So you can basically have up to 16 control servos, doors, flaps, blah, blah, blah. And it was comparable in price. Actually, it was less. It was in between the Fly Sky and then at the time it was the Tyrannus. That was, so it was like right in the middle and on the cheaper end. And I was like, okay, well, what I liked about that was that I could extend the receivers out to have more than the basic 6 channels if I wanted to, when I get more advanced. So I was excited about that. And that was part of the reason why I selected it, is the receiver modules were very cheap and they were reliable.
Yeah. So I think there's not many radios that are not reliable. I haven't dealt with any that aren't reliable. So in my mind, as long as it's a reasonably well-known brand, then the sort of requirement is 5 to 6 channels to start off with, and a receiver prices that you'll be able to afford. That's like the general idea. Another thought is this is like a combination of transmitters and flying at clubs, which we'll discuss in a moment. Is if you can get a transmitter that a lot of people in your area use, there's an advantage that they can help you out if you're having an issue programming it or something like that, because then other people know the transmitter. If you buy a transmitter that no one else uses, then you are sort of reliant on Googling it yourself and finding tutorials on how to do it. So another thought might be to have a look to find out what transmitters other people use, and to then use that as a guideline as well. So yeah, and then so as we said, a transmitter 5 to 6 channels. I wouldn't go 4. 4 channels is like, it's a very bare minimum plane. It's far more cost effective to spend just a little bit more. It's not much extra to go from 4 to 5 or 6, and to get one that's a little bit more advanced, that will last you a bit longer.
And you want to have one that you can do the changing the expo and the reversing the servo kind of stuff, you want to have it on the transmitter.
And not
I
have
had
to-
one that was like super bare bones, and you could change that, but you had to connect it into your computer.
Yeah.
And that was
That
a
was,
mistake.
I mean, then you've got to have your computer, power on the plane, power on the computer, plug it all together,
Yeah,
reprogram it. It's a mission. You want to
it was
just
a
be able
mistake.
and and you want to be able to do it at the field. So if you're flying somewhere, you want to be able to adjust it there, not have to carry your laptop with you.
Exactly right.
So,
And
yeah.
that's what I found is I did get a plane that I thought was okay. I got out to the field, it was backwards, and I couldn't fix it.
Yeah.
And that was really disappointing because that was my first experience. I was like, if I could only change the elevator, if I could reverse the elevator, I could give this another try and have success.
Yeah.
And in turn, I didn't. So I had to go back home.
Yeah. It's not so fun when that happens.
No, it's not fun. I was very sad that day.
Yeah. So the next topic that I'd like to talk about is flying at clubs, the advantages and the disadvantages, if there are any. So in my mind, flying at clubs, it's a great experience because people are there to help you. The majority of people in this hobby are very helpful. I mean, if you have an issue or something like that, they will generally help you out or try to help you out. As well as So what are your thoughts on that?
No, I was just saying, I guess something to think about. So when I started, I was like, well, I don't want to bother these guys, right?
Yeah.
I'm just doing this silly thing, and I just want to do it on my own, and I don't, maybe that, not that I don't need any help, but I really don't want to be a burden to anybody. You know what I mean? I don't know anybody here, and I just rather just go do and try the thing and then go leave. And that was the wrong attitude. I wasn't thinking these people love this hobby. And as a person who's new and kind of, getting excited about the hobby, they want to see me join the hobby and get excited about it too.
Yeah.
They want me to be proficient.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in this hobby, people want to see the hobby grow. So even if you're just interested in getting into the hobby, then one thing that you can go to is go to a club and actually chat to a couple of the guys there, and they'll be keen to help, and they'll try to convince you that it's a great hobby because they want to see you enjoy the hobby and thrive in the hobby.
Even if you're not okay with chatting them up, I guess maybe 2 questions to ask, especially if you have a plane with you, is ask them to look it over and see if you've got everything set up right. See, like, I'm new. I think I've got it right. I thought I've done everything I'm supposed to, but can you help me out? And then they'll be happy to look it over and just make sure that you're going to have the best chance for success that you can have.
Yeah, for sure.
Another benefit to being at a club is, on top of having a bunch of people, you can also talk to them about getting into a training program. A lot of the clubs will have maybe somebody's old plane that they just donated to the club itself, and they have extra transmitters, because after a while you find that you have more than one transmitter that you don't need. And then you basically, you can offer, what you can basically say is like, hey, is there a trainer program? And what they'll do is they'll take out that trainer and they'll get it set up, and they'll set you up with a mentor who will then be like a buddy box with you.
Yeah.
You're going to have to buddy box with you. And what that means is that if something's going wrong, they take control, and they can make sure that you don't hit don't hit the ground, or they basically get you out of trouble. And then they get you set up so that you can try some more and learn as you go. And then they'll teach you good habits. They'll teach you good flying. And then they can say, okay, now you're safe to fly at this field at any time you want. Go get your plane. We'll help you get it set up. And so what that does is it gets you connected to somebody specifically, right? If not a couple people. It gets you flying. It gets you flying without worrying about you crashing the plane. And also, in some senses, it's not your plane. So if you can do that, that's a great way to get in. And I should have done that. I didn't. So don't learn from what I didn't do.
And I think, I mean, I taught myself how to fly, and now I look back and think That is a silly
Yeah.
idea. Why?
It was a silly-
Why did I try it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a nice idea to say, hey, I'll teach myself how to fly. I mean, it can't be that hard.
Right. Should be easy.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's probably a much better idea to go and find a club and get the guys to get you flying. They might ask that you become a member of the club or something like that, which in my mind is fair. But it gets you flying and with professional advice, or at least experienced advice. And they can tell you exactly what you are you doing wrong or what you can do better. I mean, when I went to the club the first time, I thought I'm a good pilot now. I was like, yeah, I'm good now. And then when I arrived at the club and I started flying, and the guys were like, after I landed, I'm glad that they didn't start telling me what I was doing wrong while I was in the air, but after I landed, they mentioned a couple of things like maybe do this differently, and it's helped a lot. It's certainly advice from someone that knows what they're talking about.
Just remember, it's somebody who wants you in the hobby, who sees that you have this love or this interest, and they don't want to discourage you.
Yeah, so I think don't take it as a sort of like a criticism. Take it as friendly advice.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's a good way to think about it. And as a guy who also taught myself, the roller coasters of highs and lows are violent.
Yeah.
They're big. They're really big. So when you have success, it's incredible. But then when you crash like time after time after time, trying to do the same, like, why is this not working? That's devastating. And that could easily have pulled me out of the hobby. I think what helped me keep in the hobby, and it's part of why I started our podcast, was listening to people talk about their experiences and realizing I'm not the only one crashing. Yeah. I'm not the only one having troubles with this or taking forever to build. Like sometimes I'm thinking, oh, why is it taking me so long to do this? Or why don't I understand this? It's like, well, these guys are experienced. They've been doing this for a while and they're still having these problems.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're having fun with it and just time to, relax. And it's like, by hearing those things, I'm like, yeah, I need to get back into that.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me give that another try. And so having, you've done the right first step in listening to this podcast. So find a bunch of podcasts that you resonate with or whatever, having to do with this hobby, and listen to a couple of them every so often, and it'll help keep you in the hobby when you may be discouraged.
Yeah. Because
honestly, the hobby is awesome.
It's an incredible hobby. Yeah.
It's just so many scratches that I've got, scratches, so many itches, sorry, that I've got in this hobby. So, it's one of those things.
Yeah. And I think another thing with flying with other people is, well, at least in my experience, if I'm flying alone and I crash, I beat myself up about the crash. If you're flying with people and you crash, there's just this like group mentality that it becomes a joke type of thing, and it's more of a fun thing that happened and not a bad thing that happened. Right. And it's also, like part of the learning curve.
Yeah. Also, if you get a chance to fly with other people, on top of the shared experience being fun, if you do lose something out in the field, they can help be your eyeballs, like to keep you on track with finding that plane. Yeah. Because oftentimes it's either way further than you expect, or not as far as you think, or it's off center, or you didn't pick a line the way you're supposed to. Yeah. And now you're having to spend hours finding that plane or that item that came off.
Yes. So I mean, if you're trying to fly a plane and say something falls off, like your canopy, if it's a detachable canopy and that falls off, you're not going to watch the part falling. You're going to watch the plane.
You're going to watch the plane. Yeah, but if you're with other people, they'll be like, okay, I got the canopies in this line. I got this line, and you walk out, and then I will tell you left or right.
Yeah. So
big help.
It certainly does help. So yeah. So yeah, I think flying at a club is probably one of the best, or getting started at a club is probably one of the best moves. But that along with getting a simulator. in my mind, spend simulator time before going to a club. That's just what my thought is, because otherwise you can't learn as quickly at the club. Whereas if you've already got simulator time, then you sort of know how to fly, and then you're much more proficient if you go to a club and the guys put you on a buddy box trainer, then you can actually fly rather than attempt to fly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm trying to think of what else. So what else is you want to talk about why you like scratch building?
Yeah. So in terms of why I prefer scratch building than anything else, I think for me, the biggest thing is my budget. I can't afford to go out and buy a plane. I buy secondhand planes from the guys at the club every once in a while when they're good prices. But
that's actually a good point. I didn't even bring that up, is that looking for secondhand planes. And one of the reasons to join a club is people get tired of their planes.
Yeah.
And they just want to get enough money to maybe cover a part of the next one.
Yeah. And like if they join the hobby and now they've advanced a bit and they've got planes that they don't fly anymore, that they like for them, they're not fun to fly anymore. They normally want to sell them, or even sometimes they'll give them away at the club. I've seen that a couple of times, but it doesn't happen as often. But generally, they'll sell them for a good price, and that's certainly it's quite a good way to get into hobby, because then you get a plane. Generally, they're quite well looked after. They fly just as well as if they're new. Might not look as pretty, but I don't think if you're a beginner, don't be worried about how the plane looks. That's not
the goal of the beginning hobbyist. The goal is to get in the air and learn to fly.
Yeah, and then you can start getting planes that are pretty planes. But I think getting secondhand planes is certainly quite a good way to go, and generally you get them a lot cheaper than if you bought them new. So maybe half price, something like that, and in about they fly as well as if they're new. So usually, usually. I've had a couple of experiences.
No, generally, people are saying it with an earnest desire to see you continue in the hobby. They're going to give you a plane that's worth putting in the air. Yeah,
that still flies well. So I think that's certainly an advantage to joining a club. And then also,
so what kind of savings do you get from? You said that about 50% if you get basically a used plane versus a new plane. How does that compare to a scratch built, cost wise?
Compared to scratch built, it really depends on whether you already have the motors and that type of stuff. If I'm purchasing the motors, the servos, and everything else, then it comes out on par with a secondhand plane. The main difference is often I can't find a secondhand plane that I'm looking at, or the specific style that I'm looking for, but I can scratch build. So I think that's, in terms of cost wise, it's about the same price to buy a secondhand plane or to scratch build it. I think scratch building for me is, I personally enjoy scratch building almost as much as I enjoy flying.
You and me are of similar mindset, that's for sure.
So if I can't fly, I'm more than happy to build, and I think that makes a big difference as well. If you want to build, or if you want to spend time with your father, with your son, or your daughter, or anyone like that, scratch building is a great way to, if it's rainy outside, if the weather's not so great, or in the evenings, do something together. So scratch building is on par with buying a secondhand plane, but it just
let's say you have all the equipment.
So
I'm sorry.
So if you have a plane that you've crashed, and then you've got all of the motors and stuff out of it, then it's definitely going to be cheaper to scratch build a plane than to purchase a secondhand plane. So yeah, that's sort of what my point of view is on that. And what
Right.
would be yours?
It's like, what about a fifth to a tenth of the cost
Yeah,
to rebuild a new plane?
yeah, yeah. And just what I mentioned a moment ago is spending time with family and that type of thing. And that's something that's also like my passion, is to get
Yeah.
it's a way for families to spend time together, and to have a valuable time together. And it's
All right.
fun.
You said you and your brother fly together. Is that
Yes, yeah,
what
yeah,
I heard right?
yeah, that's correct. My brother and I fly together quite frequently. So yeah,
Right.
so
It's really awesome.
so we build planes together and fly them together. But I mean, if you've got, even if you have a friend, say if you're in high school or in school, and there's a friend that you want to build a plane with, then you get together and you like share the price of getting into the hobby, and then you share the plane and the building experience and the flying experience type of thing. And I think that's like, it's a great hobby to do together with friends or family and that type of thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of how Joe and I got to become from friends to like really good friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been awesome. It's a great experience. And I know one of my kids has no interest in he has no interest in building. He's okay with flying as long as I'm willing to rebuild. And then my other kid, he seems to be interested in a little bit of both, but we're kind of on the fence on that. He'll come out and
Yeah.
he'll videotape for now, and sometimes they're like, oh, we can fly. But the buddy box is critical on that one.
Yeah.
They have a lot more confidence on the buddy box.
Yeah.
I don't think they've quite wanted to get off that yet. They're like, I don't know, Dad.
Yeah, I think buddy boxes, it's great if, as you say, to give them a little bit more confidence. If you've had a bit more experience, or if your friend had a bit more experience flying, then you naturally like trust them a bit more than if they have no experience flying. So
Absolutely.
it just gives you a more confidence that there's a person next to you who if there's an issue, takes over and can fix the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's one of the advantages of also being part of a club, is that it allows you to have access to experienced flyers and builders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I'd recommend as a beginner is once you kind of get started, get involved in one of the communities.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't matter. And I'm talking about like outside of maybe the flying community. I know mine, they meet pretty much one day a week, and they don't really, there's not a lot of interactions in between per se, at least for between me and them.
Yeah.
And what I'm getting the sense of is like, but in between, that's what I'm building. And so I like to interact with people, kind of share what you're building and get encouragement along the way, get ideas between each other, and vice versa. You can look on those communities and see what other people are building and how they're doing it. And there might be things that you get to, strike up conversations with people you never meet.
Yeah.
And just kind of go, oh, wow, look at that. I mean, for example, you and I, if we hadn't met on some of these other communities, I wouldn't be able to witness just the mad pace, the mad pace at which you put planes together, which is similar to mine. It's really good. Like I really enjoy seeing you get so excited about coming up with like, I want to build this, and then and a little bit later, here you are, you have a model ready to test out.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see.
So I think a communities, online communities, that type of thing, they're absolutely amazing in the fact that they allow you to connect to people worldwide, that might have suggestions for things that you've never thought of. I mean, I've been struggling with issues that I ask on one of these communities, and like 3 guys come up with amazing answers, things that I probably would have never thought of. And it just like, it's a benefit of being part of a community. So it's like there's Facebook groups, there's Discord,
Yeah.
There's a couple of others. There's forums, that type of thing. Yeah.
Yep. It seems to me probably one of the best beginner friendly forums is probably the flight test forums. Seems to be pretty beginner friendly, generally speaking. They're very encouraging. And if you're asking I'll call it a dumb question. If you're asking a question that even has been answered, it's been answered somewhere. They're not going to say, "Hey, idiot, why don't you just use the search function?" They're going to say, "Hey, here's the answer, but if you use the search function, you can probably find some more information too."
Yeah.
Which is a much nicer way to go about, trying to get you in.
Yeah, for sure. Then informing you that you could have used the search function.
Right, exactly. And I've had that happen to me. The new guy on this one, RC Groups is huge. It covers like all of RC.
Yeah.
And there's so much stuff in there. I mean, there's such a wealth of data and information and stuff like that. But the people in there tend to be like, "Why are you asking these stupid questions?" At least that's been the impression I've felt. And so they're not quite new friendly, but if you have a really interesting idea, or you're trying to tackle an interesting problem, if you find the right forum, there'll be people who are going to give you great ideas there.
Yeah.
But don't ask the dumb questions. So that's always kind of tough. Like, where does a new guy fit in? How do you know more if you get shunned every time you try to learn something new?
So I think that's where like at these podcasts I come in. So like your podcast and my podcast, which I mean, this is the first episode, so it's getting started.
Hey, congrats, by the way, and starting it off.
Thanks. So I'll put a link to your podcast. So if the listeners want to learn more, find out more, like what are all these strange electronics that we're using, they can find out quite easily without having to be the one asking a question. They can learn through a podcast, which you can listen to while you're driving or anything like that. So I think,
definitely. I was going to say, like, our first year we cover all the basic materials. The second year we cover the planes and types of flying, and kind of basic categories and stuff like that. And then we kind of branch out a little bit further as we go on. One thing that we do as a community, part of our community started, like you were saying, when you started in, COVID-19 started, everything got locked down. Nobody could meet to be able to talk about stuff. And I don't know, the people I live with don't want me to talk about planes all the time, but
I know that feeling.
And that's okay. And you might be in that, as a listener, you might be in that same boat. These communities, we started a Discord server because we wanted to see if we could get people to build together.
Yeah.
I really like the idea. I put a challenge on the flight test forums, build your array, which is like, there's 4 weeks, build 4 planes in that month. Good luck. It's not easy. Like, build it, fly it, and it's so hard. It's ridiculous. So, right. So it's lots of fun. So I was like, well, why don't we start this Discord thing and see if we can't get those guys on and we'll all build together? Because I know we're building. There's only one way to get through this challenge and succeed, is to be building like all the time. So we ended up putting up to a couple build sessions, and they went really well.
Yeah.
And it was really good to meet some of the people I've been talking to in the forums digitally, like with text, and actually meet them face to face and have conversations real time, which was great. So we decided as a podcast, like, maybe we should start doing that just as a podcast, and have our listeners who are interested in building together come together and meet up. And we have designated nights, but I mean, really, if you're in that forum and you just say, "Hey, I'm building a night, who else wants to join me?" You might have, what was it the other night? We had 4 or 5 people just kind of roaming in and out of building and talking and chatting and all that stuff. Was great.
Yeah. I think the other night, maybe it was Saturday, there was like there was an entire boat party. There were like 9 people online. Or was it an official boat party?
Right. Which was awesome. Like, I looked at it, I was like, yay.
Yeah.
I love seeing that. I love seeing the community come together. And even though in that case, it can only be a handful at a time, we have multiple build channels. So that way, when there gets to be too much, because at 9 or 10, like, the conversations are just almost impossible to have. You kind of have to break out into smaller groups. But we did that on purpose, because we knew, like, if it grows, we want people to enjoy themselves while they're doing this. So,
and it must be it must be a white noise of chatter.
At a certain point it becomes that. And I think that's like, when Flight Test, they do their, I guess I'll call it a build party or build session or whatever. They'll be online and basically one of the guys just building, and then they have a chat line that's just scrolling by at mad pace. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like
it's a mad pace.
There's no way if all those people were just chatting, it wouldn't work. So but I like the intimacy of the build parties. So anyway, that's what part of our podcast community brings to the table that I don't think a lot of other places do. A lot of other podcasts don't. But I think it's good. I know I don't know what you're going to be putting together entirely. I'm sure you're figuring that out.
Yeah.
I know your goal is to connect South Africa. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Connect South Africa newbies, bring them together and create a community across the whole country.
Yeah. I think that's my main goal, is to bring people together and to get people into the hobby. So yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah. I'm
glad you did it.
Yeah. Oh, well, nothing risked, nothing gained.
That's it.
So yeah. So I think we can wrap up the podcast unless you've got any other thoughts.
No, I don't have any new thoughts. All I gotta say is get out there and start it.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah. I mean, get a transmitter and a simulator, or go and visit a club. If you just Google RC clubs in say Johannesburg or Cape Town, which are the two major areas, then there's generally quite a few clubs, more than you'd think. And you phone one of them up, just check that they're fine with you coming over on a certain day, that there'll actually be people there. And then go over.
They usually have a club president contact number and stuff, and you reach out to them, and they'll kind of give you the quick skinny. I mean, the biggest downside about joining a club is it usually costs money, because the use of the land usually costs them some money to do, and some of the building the different things that are picnic tables and a lean-to or whatever it is. Yeah,
for sure.
It costs some money, so they need some money for that.
Yeah, so from my experience, they're generally quite happy to have you there 2 to 3 times for free, and then they want you to, and then they're like saying, okay, would you mind becoming part of the club now, a club member? Right. And it's not a big fee. It's not a large amount. I mean, for a year, the general clubs around here are maybe $500, $600, which is what, $30 or so, $30-$40 for a year. So it's not bad.
Right. Yeah. It's usually worth it. I mean, to go to a place that you're not going to be, like, I go out to school, I might go out the wrong day, I might get yelled at, like, oh, you can't be here for whatever reason. And it's like, well, I thought this was kind of like public land, and they're like, well, not quite. And you're like, well, stink.
That's
a place you can always go. Like I can always go, and I'm not going to get yelled at. Yeah.
Well, you can go if it's raining. I wouldn't advise flying in the rain, but
it's hard to see.
Yeah. Well, actually last night I got caught a bit in the rain while I was flying. The rain hit like that, and then I was flying in the rain, and I bring it down quickly because my planes aren't waterproof.
Yeah, right. That's your plane's starting to fall apart as you go.
Yeah. So but it was nice chatting, and hopefully we'll see you in a future podcast.
Absolutely, that'd be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool.
And good luck.
You too. And a wonderful day further for all of our listeners and you.